Hello, everybody. Metropolitan Report is back. Happy belated New Year. I'm Alfred Jr. And this is our first stream of the new year. Shout out to everybody watching on Facebook, Twitch, Instagram. One commenter already. My good friend Cal Bowl. Hey, Alfred, everybody. Good to hear from you, my friend. We are here. We are live again. The Metropolitan Report on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitch. We're all over the place. Shout out to everybody on the Grid Network. Before I begin, just want to apologize for the lack of coverage the last couple of weeks, dealing with a couple of health issues and schedule issues. But nonetheless, we are here now, and we are not 24, but maybe 12. Yeah, about a good 16 hours removed from the Kyle Tucker signing. We'll talk about that. Mets land Bo Bichette. We're going to talk about that. And then, of course, we still got to talk about this front office and if the hot stove has finally gotten warm a little bit. And we'll discuss some other things there. Before I begin today's show, just want to remind everybody, if you are watching on YouTube, down below and hit that subscribe button every time we go live, post a new video, new vlog, whatever we're going to do. You'll be one of the first ones to know. So, all right. Let's begin with the more positive news first. This caught me by surprise. Did not have this on my radar, but the Mets have signed Bo Bichette, ladies and gentlemen. Bo Bichette, previously of the Toronto Blue Jays, also known as the Legacy. Of course, he is the son of former big league veteran Dante Bichette, who played with the Colorado Rockies, amongst other teams. But Bo Bichette is a Met. Let's get into the deal. Bo Bichette signing a couple hours ago. Bichette signs a 3-year deal. And again, 3 years, $126 million. Surprise, surprise, surprise. It's been a very tumultuous offseason for the Mets. Of course, I don't have to beat a dead horse, but the Mets traded away Jeff McNeil. The Mets traded away Brandon Nimmo. The Mets let both Pete Alonso and Edwin Diaz walk in free agency. But the signings thus far, since the winter meetings began, and then, of course, afterwards, have been not received very warmly by the fan base. Of course, I'm talking about bullpen additions, Luke Weaver and Devin Williams, both coming crosstown from the Bronx. They were Yankees last season, to now becoming New York Mets. And let's get into the dichotomy of this Bo Bichette signing. Again, this is very, very surprising. And want to give a shout out to Matthew J. Deems. And that's what we're about to talk about right now. He had a deal with Phillies, then signs with Mets. Wow. In regards to Bo Bichette. So the Phillies were interested in Bo Bichette. He was strongly believed to be going to Philadelphia. Philadelphia offered a 7-year, $200 million deal to Bichette just last night. 7 years at 200 would have given Bichette an AAV of $28.5 million. He turns around and signs with the Mets 3 years for $126 with a $42 million AAV. And, it's similar to what the Dodgers did to the Mets just last night with the Kyle Tucker news. And we'll get to that a little bit later in the program, where the Mets were outbid by the Dodgers. The Mets came in and swooped into the Bo Bichette sweepstakes and outbid the Phillies. And I'm actually not upset about that, because who better than to go underneath and swoop somebody from than a division rival? So Bo Bichette, a great signing. I'm going to show you what he did in 2025 here. We could pull up the graphic for Mr. Bichette. Again, last season with the Toronto Blue Jays, who appeared in the World Series last year. Bichette did not play in the World Series due to being injured. But last season, Bo Bichette, a .311 average, which it's very difficult in this day and age to find a player who's consistently going to hit above 300. Of course, if you're a career 300 hitter, that's Hall of Fame right there. 18 home runs, 94 RBIs, stolen bases 4. He's not really a fast guy on the bags, and an OPS of 840. And why does this make sense? You got to remember, the Mets traded Brandon Nimmo away earlier in this offseason. Brandon Nimmo, and again, Brandon Nimmo was very productive. They traded him for Marcus Semien. And Nimmo, last season, had 92 RBIs. So now you found a way to make up for the RBIs you gave up in that Semien trade. Of course, Bo Bichette, not a powerful slugger, 18, good for an infielder. So, I mean, he has the OPS that you want out of a player. And of course, anytime that you get a guy who bats over 300 for a season, we'll take it. The only slight concern with Bichette is his injury history. Of course, again, last season, he was unavailable for the postseason run of the Blue Jays, but injuries are going to happen in sports. Injuries are going to happen in baseball. There's no way to prevent injuries in the sport of baseball. So I'm more than thrilled with this signing of Bo Bichette. Again, it's been a rough offseason, and this is actually the first move that David Stearns has made that I will actually applaud. We take the graphic of Bichette off the screen. I know I've been critical of David Stearns. I know I've called for the man's job, but I'm actually, no, I'm mistaken. He did play in the World Series, but he was injured for part of the season. My mistake. Thank you, chat. And I'll get to your comments in a second. But I've been critical of David Stearns, and I know I've called for the man to be fired. I know I've called him an idiot, a moron, and a whole collection of things. But this is actually a really, 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 really good move by David Stearns. I mean, he's still not out of the water yet because there are still other parts of this franchise that need fixing before we get to spring training. But I am wholeheartedly happy with this move. We get a guy who hits for a very high average, a productive guy, a 90 RBI guy. We just gave up 100 plus with Alonso, 94 with Nimmo, and we get back 92. I can't be too mad. Let's get to the comments before I move on. Shout out to my guy, friend of the show, Bryson Carver. Bo Bichette is a solid bounce back signing after the Kyle Tucker news. He is, by the way, check out the Carving It Up podcast with Bryson Carver, the Carve Master, that airs on the Grid Network every Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Stanley 4723, move Beatty to outfield or trade him. I don't know if you're asking me what I think on that, or if you're just giving me your opinion, but that's rough, and we're gonna get to that in just a bit. My friend Kevin Nasta, an opt-out after year 2. Cal says Bo Bichette left the Phillies at the wedding altar. That he did. Kevin reminded me that Bichette did play in the World Series, 348. That World Series was a blur to me. I was checked out of baseball after the Mets collapse. And then my good friend of the show, Barry Grant Jr., says he raked in the World Series. That he did. So, the big question is, with Bichette in town, what happens? And myself and Barry Grant Jr. Last month had a discussion around Jorge Polanco, who's a third baseman and going to play first. And, you know, the big question at the time was, well, what happens with the logjam of Mets infielders? And the Mets, if you look at their infield roster, right? They trade Nimmo for Semien, so now you have a second baseman. Unless he decides to retire prematurely to the shock of everybody, or some natural disaster occurs, as long as he is under contract and breathing, Francisco Lindor will always be at short They said Polanco at first. And now you have Bichette, who presumably will play third. So now what happens to Brett Beatty, to Mark Vientos, to Ronnie Mauricio, to Luis Angel Acuna? That's the big question. There is a logjam. There is a logjam. There is a logjam at first base. And well, not at first base. Sorry, there's a logjam in the infield. Now, of course, you just signed Polanco to a deal. You have to play him. Again, Lindor, no question. Simeon, you traded for, no question. Bichette has to play. You don't sign a guy for that money, $42 million AAV, and don't play him. So, and you traded McNeil, so he's no longer in the equation. But it just makes you wonder, what happens to a guy like Mauricio? What happens to a guy like Acuna? Now, there have been rumblings Acuna can play a little bit of center field. Of course, his older brother Ronald, the superstar on the Braves, that guy's in right field every day. Will it translate to Luis Angel? We don't know. Ronnie Mauricio would probably be the one who is probably going to lose the most in this situation. Ronnie Mauricio, outside of short and third, really can't play anywhere else. Maybe second. But in a logjam of infielders, he really, in my honest opinion, if I'm David Stearns, I'm going to try to shop Ronnie Mauricio. And I like Ronnie. I've always had a history on this program of favoring switch hitters. Always favored switch hitters. Ronnie Mauricio is a switch hitter, but I've said it since the very beginning. Since they brought Mauricio up. That we already, he's a shortstop by trade. We have a shortstop, a switch hitting shortstop who hits for power, by the way, already signed up for the next few years. And then on top of that, you have Luis Angel, very speedy guy. If he can at least, play a little center, and that's a complicated position of itself. But if you have him in the fold, that's okay. You can move him around. But then Vientos, I think you got to make Brett Beatty your DH. I would not platoon Beatty and Vientos at designated hitter, only because last season, the Mark Vientos from 2024, he got on a ship and went to Mars, and they replaced him with this Vientos of 25, which was dreadful. So, I mean, I don't know who if there was an odd man out and I'm David Stearns, Mauricio's got to go, because some people will argue, well, maybe you could put him in the minors, but put him in the minors to do what exactly? Wait for somebody to get hurt and then bring him up? The only thing I could think of is Marcus Semien, who's been injury prone the last 2 seasons. Maybe, just maybe, you stash Mauricio for Semien if he gets hurt. But then again, that doesn't even make sense because you still got Acuna. And I like Mauricio more than I like them both, but I like Mauricio more than I like Luis Angel Acuna. But the Mets still need starting pitching. Tarek Skubal still got to get traded from Detroit. I doubt that he's going to be an expiring contract that stays there to start camp. So if I'm David Stearns, because the Mets do need starting pitching, and they need starting pitching bad. So if I'm David Stearns, I would probably include Mauricio in a trade package for Skubal, but more on that later. Let's get to some more comments here. My good friend, Justin Caballero, who also does some great commentary at Intense Wrestling Alliance in New Jersey, January 24th in Nutley, by the way, says, why am I against salary cap? I've never been a fan of salary cap in baseball, only because I just feel like, small market teams have won the World Series before. We've seen it, and you can do your research on who's a small market team and who's not. We've seen the Angels, not the Angels, sorry. We've seen the Royals, in in 2015. They beat my Mets. I could never forget that. We've seen the Marlins win twice, small market. The Nationals did it in 2019. Their payroll is not high. So, say what you will, small market teams can compete. We've seen the Guardians, a small market team, make the playoffs every season the last couple of years. I have no issue. Like, people are so worried about what the Dodgers are doing. And the Dodgers are doing exactly what the Yankees did in the late 90s, early 2000s, to tell you the truth. You can't have vitriol for the Dodgers and say that they have an advantage or this, that, and the third. But when George Steinbrenner ran the Yankees in the late 90s, early 2000s, he went out. He got Scott Brocious. He got Chuck Knobloch. He got Paul O'Neill. He got Roger Clemens, David Wells. Later on, after the dynasty ended, Gary Sheffield, Johnny Damon, Randy Johnson. He basically opened the checkbook and bought all these great players. You know how many Hall of Fame players that are not homegrown Yankees were playing on the same team at the same time? Like, if you weren't mad when the Yankees did it back then, you can't be mad at the Dodgers now. That's why I'm against the salary cap. And we've seen small market teams or mid to small market teams get in the World Series as of late. Arizona Diamondbacks were there in 2023. Again, the Nationals won in 2019. So, like, what are we really talking about here? It's been proven in not just baseball, but in all sports, that just because you have the biggest payroll doesn't mean you're going to win. So that's that. Look at the Angels. The Angels haven't even made the playoffs. In 2019, the Angels still had a prime Mike Trout, a prime Anthony Rendon they brought over. 2020, sorry. Prime Anthony Rendon they brought over. Shohei Ohtani, who's been great since the moment he stepped on American baseball fields, and a still serviceable Albert Pujols, and still didn't win a damn thing. Mills Hendricks says, low-key, the lineup looked better than last year. They just need a center fielder. Well, from what David Stearns has said, Carson Benj, our top prospect in the outfield, is going to compete for a spot in camp. Kevin Nasta, David Stearns has the right to build this team his way. He, in my opinion, has 2 seasons. So, Kevin, if you're still watching, I would like to know, what is your opinion on this offseason so far? Nimmo, Pete, Diaz, are you not upset about that? Do you think we're better off without them? I think that the team it's hard to give up a guy 38 home runs over 120 RBIs. I'm still not happy about that. But JC says, where is the run prevention at? The run prevention still remain to be seen. Devin Williams and Luke Weaver, we're just going to have to see if they implode in the pressure cooker or not. My good friend Bryson Carver, can we get an apology for David Stearns? Not yet. Mills Hendricks has switched over to YouTube. I see, not going to lie. Lineup looked better, just need a center fielder. Kevin, again, most people don't know Polanco was taking first base infield last season to improve his chances in free agency. I do agree. Barry Grant, this lineup is better than last year and might be getting better. Cody, Doyle, Robert, Buxton, Duran, loading. We not done. Well, it remains to be seen. Like I said, if Stearns can pull any more of those moves off, I'll admit I was wrong. But as of right now, one move is not enough. And I'll get to David Stearns in some comments later on. Kevin's got a question. When was the last time a team has 4 shortstops playing 4 different infield positions in one lineup? I cannot recall, honestly, but I'm sure you will tell me. Barry Grant, make Beatty super utility. First, second, third, left field. We'll see what happens. Mauricio is going to wind up being traded to the Reds for Edwin Encarnacion Strand. Interesting. Cal, Mauricio still has minor league options for 2026. That he does. My good friend Seth, shout out to Seth. He's happy Kyle Tucker signed with the Dodgers. Why is that? Mills Hendricks, he would not shop Ronnie. Why not? Stanley says trade Vientos. Kevin again. Vientos, Mauricio are headed out of town. They'll keep Beatty to play third, second, and left-handed bat off the bench. Again, like I said, I wouldn't mind because Vientos is not the same guy he was in 2024 in that second half. He's simply just not. Acuna will be the super utility guy to play outfield, shortstop, second base. Friend of the show, Sincere Brown. Mets not shopping Beatty. They love him too much. I never said they would shop Beatty. Greater opportunity emerges. What is the Mets' excuse for not winning? Well, we know why last season the Mets did not make the playoffs and why they faltered. It was the pitching. The pitching just shut down. The Mets offensively had no issues at the top of the lineup. Again, Nimmo, Lindor, Soto, Alonso. Soto finished third in MVP voting. Alonso led the team in RBIs, was tops in home runs, among the tops in home runs. It was the pitching. When you have starting pitching that cannot get you to the fifth inning and a bullpen that just implodes, like that's why they're not winning. Mills Hendricks, in regards to when I said about the Yankees' evil empire, he was mad when the Yankees did it. That's just the game. Kevin says, Tampa Rays, small market, that's a perennial play. Yes. Good example. The Tampa Bay Rays normally, with the exception of last season, usually always in the playoff mix in a wild card, and they're a small market team. Just because you have a higher payroll does not guarantee you to win. And that's just a fact. JC says, you are absolutely right about that regarding the Yankees. I hate that I carried for them from that era has now carried on over modern day Dodgers. Listen, the Dodgers are, like I said, and I said this, and I had a conversation with my good friend Sincere Brown, who's also in the comments. Again, the Yankees did it, and that's how they got their dynasty. If you look at those Yankee teams, only Jeter, Pettit, Posada, Bernie Williams, and Mariano Rivera were homegrown talents on those rosters. Everybody else, David Wells, David Cone, Roger Clemens. At one point, they went and got Darryl Strawberry, Jose Canseco, Doc Gooden, Paul O'Neill, and the list goes on and on and on of all the players that Steinbrenner went and sat down with and threw money at to make those transactions and those moves. And again, people are saying, oh, well, the Dodgers might be up to something. The Dodgers. How are they anybody they throw money at is going to sign? I mean, when you've won 2 straight World Series and you've won 3 World Series in 5 seasons, that makes you a dynasty. And they have a pretty good chance to three-peat already. I already went over why Edwin Diaz went to Chavez Ravine. Back-to-back World Series champions. They gave him a little bit more money. They deferred it too, so when he's out of the league and retired, he's still going to get paid. And on top of that, his brother plays there. So, you know, like we can't argue. We can't argue this because the Yankees did it back then, and the baseball world was at their mercy every free agency. But the Yankees were buying players well up until Steinbrenner died, and again, they didn't win. They only won once in 2009, right before he died. So we're not really talking about anything here. We've seen big market teams lose. The Dodgers lost to the Red Sox in 2018. They were a large market team. The Dodgers weren't in every World Series in the last 5 years. The Diamondbacks almost won it in 2023. The Nationals did it in 19. So the Royals in 15. Just because you're a big market team with all this payroll does not guarantee you to win. Carving It Up podcast. Bryson Carver says Blue Jays came as close as you possibly can to winning a World Series without doing it, and their payroll was nowhere near the Dodgers. Salary cap isn't necessary. Correct. And on top of that, they took the Dodgers to Game 7. If the Dodgers didn't get a home run in the bottom of that ninth, they would the home run with Miguel Rojas tied the game in Game 7. We're not talking about 2-time defending back-to-back champions LA Dodgers. And they pushed them to the limit. Kevin says, no issue with this. No issues letting Alonso go. Diaz, I was pissed, but I have faith in Stearns. Cohen bought everyone under year one and flopped terribly. Let the baseball people run the baseball team. I just got to see more out of Stearns because, like I said, you look at the Phillies, you look at the Atlanta Braves, I don't think we could compete with them as this team is built right now. Sincere Brown says it's pitching in reference to my earlier question. Stanley has a question. How do the Mets address their pitching issues? Simple. Mets got to go out and get starting pitching. Again, Tarek Skubal is up for trade. He goes to the Dodgers. You might as well give them a ring already before the season begins. The Mets just got to go after starting depth. They've got to make a trade. There are starting pitchers out there who I'm sure for the right offer will not be on those teams anymore. Kevin says 2,000 Yanks says Strawberry Canseco, Henry Rodriguez on it. None played in the postseason. They signed him to block them from going to the Red Sox. Cal says Padres had shortstop Ha-Seong Kim, shortstop Xander Bogaerts, Tatis, Jackson Merrill playing different positions all at once. Good observation. Sincere Brown, I don't have a problem with the salary cap issue. I have a problem with the defers. That's the issue. We'll touch on that when we talk about Kyle Tucker in just a second. Cal says the Mets played the Dodgers in the 24 NLCS. Payroll is not everything, but it was suffocating for the Mets to compete with the Dodgers. We ran out of juice. All right, I'm going to use that comment to pivot to our next topic. Last night, the news broke around 10 p.m. Kyle Tucker to the LA Dodgers. Kyle Tucker played with the Cubs last season. He's now a Los Angeles Dodger, and the Mets were outbid. They were outbid. I'm not mad at David Stearns about the Kyle Tucker. It was $20 more million. But Kyle Tucker signing with the Dodgers last night, he was expected to make his decision today. And rather than today, he rushed it by a good 12 hours. Kyle Tucker got a 4-year deal, $240 million. The Mets offered the same amount of years. They offered a 4-year deal and gave him $220. And a lot of people say, oh, well, $20 million. $20 million was the big difference. $20 million. Now, I personally feel the Dodgers overpaid for Tucker, and I'm going to tell you why exactly. So Kyle Tucker last year, we pull up his numbers here. Didn't make a graphic for it because he's not on our team, so who gives a damn? But Kyle Tucker hit 266 last year, 22 home runs, 73 RBIs. Now, you look at those numbers and you say, okay, solid. But the Dodgers paid $240 million through 4 years. That's $60 million AAV. The Mets offered $220 for 4. That's $55. And the Mets did not defer any money. The Dodgers gave him deferred money. But this is going to surprise you, ladies and gentlemen, because we do a lot of research on this show. 22 home runs and 73 runs batted in for Kyle Tucker in 2025. His numbers are hardly better than Anthony Volpe of the Yankees. And Anthony Volpe only made $3 million last year. If you think I'm joking, look it up. Again, Kyle Tucker last year, 22 home runs and 73 RBIs. Anthony Volpe had 19 home runs and 72 RBIs. 19 home runs and 72 RBIs. So Kyle Tucker had 1 more RBI and 3 more home runs than Anthony Volpe. And you mean to tell me that that's the guy who got the $60 million AAV contract? I'll let that sink in again. Kyle Tucker finished last season 3 more home runs and 1 more RBI than $3 million shortstop Anthony Volpe. Also, sorry, my throat's bothering me. Also, Kyle Tucker was an all-star last year. An all-star last year. And we covered this last season. Kyle Tucker got in and Juan Soto didn't. I don't even have to remind you of the season Juan Soto had. He finished third in the MVP voting last year. And you mean to tell me that this guy, Kyle Tucker, say what you will, this guy, Kyle Tucker, deserved the $60 million AAV? We'll get to some comments here. Friend of the show, Sincere Brown, Mets offered $75 million sign-on bonus. Tucker was like, I don't need it. Kevin, Kyle Tucker will be playing first base when Freeman retires or leaves. We've seen decent hitting outfielders go to first base after a while. Bryce Harper did it in Philly. He's no longer an outfielder. He now plays first base. Pujols did it in St. Louis very early on in his career. Started in left field, went to first. Sincere Brown repeats what I said. No deferment, still turned it down. My good friend, Bobby Munoz. Hi, Bobby. How you doing? What about the batting average? All right, I'll give you that. Tucker hit 266 last year. Volpe 219. And who is more of a threat? Obviously, you'd be more scared of Tucker than Volpe. Sincere Brown says that says a lot. Yes, it does. His numbers, batting average aside, where it really counts, the production, is that of Anthony Volpe. And it's more telling because Kyle Tucker is the guy that you would be more scared to pitch to. But only one more RBI. So what? He's getting empty hits? Is that what it is? So that shows that when Volpe hits, he's much more productive. Juan Soto should have been an all-star. He started slow in 25. Correct, Cal. There's no disputing that. And Bobby says, are you more afraid to pitch to Tucker or Volpe? Obviously Tucker. Although Volpe has had some clutch moments where he snuck opposing pitchers. Sincere Brown says the Mets envision Brett Baty playing multiple positions, including left field, as per John Heyman. Good to know. But Kyle Tucker going to the Dodgers, again, say what you will, they outbid the Mets. But for a guy who has the production of, the shortstop across town who their fan base is fed up with, by all means, take him. But that leads to the other point. A lot of fans, and we talked about this earlier, I'm going to get in depth on it now. A lot of fans are saying, oh, well, the Dodgers need to be investigated. We need to put a salary cap on baseball. No, we don't need a salary cap on baseball. We don't need a salary cap. As I said earlier, just because you have the biggest payroll does not mean that you will win it all. Look at us in 2022. The Mets won 101 games with Max Scherzer and Jacob deGrom and all these other guys. Got Justin Verlander the next season for half a season. Mets had the highest payroll in baseball in 22 and 23, and we didn't win. We didn't win. We didn't even get to the playoffs in 23. The Dodgers, they went to the World Series and won it in 2020. They didn't get back to the World Series till 2024. Nationals won in 2019. Royals won in 2015. Since the expanded wild card era, where it was 4 teams in the playoffs instead of 2 in each league. The Marlins have won it twice. There's no worse small market team than the Miami Marlins or the Florida Marlins back then. So it's like, what are we discussing here? Arizona's usually in the mix every couple of seasons. Like what are we really talking about in this conversation? I understand the Dodgers are throwing money at people and they're signing. But also, you have to remember, it's not just about the money. The Dodgers have won each of the last 2 World Series, and they've won 3 in 5 years. They won 3 in 5 years. Who wouldn't want to go to a place where you have the best chance to win? As mad as I am about Edwin Diaz going to the Dodgers, I understand why he did it. And he wanted to stay, but Stearns wanted to play cute and bring his guy Devin Williams. But other than that, his brother is there. He won 2 World Series. They won 2 World Series back to back, and they probably have a pretty darn good chance to repeat and be the first team since those dreaded evil Empire Yankees of the late 90s, early 2000s to win 3 in a row. 98, 99, 2000. So I don't blame anybody who goes to the Dodgers. I don't blame Kyle Tucker for going to the Dodgers. Now, my issue in all of this is all the deferred money that they're tossing around because they still have mega pay. I mean, is it smart? Yes. Is it within the rules? Yes. But it's looking like an abuse of the rules. When they signed Shohei Ohtani prior to the 2024 season, they deferred a lot of money in Shohei's contract. Plenty of money in Shohei's contract was deferred. But they deferred the money so that they could use the available money to go get other players. Understandable. They get Diaz has got a decent amount of deferred money, as does Tucker. But it's within the rules. I'm not mad at it. When the Yankees did it, there was no deferred money involved. And everybody either really loved him if you were a Yankee fan or you hated him. And I'm not going to touch on it because we've talked about it several times. But I don't think baseball needs a salary cap because, again, you look at the highest payrolls. Just because you have the highest payroll doesn't mean anything. The Mets had it for a couple of years. The last couple of years didn't even sniff the playoffs one of those years. And that payroll wasn't high when we went to the NLCS in 2024. Come on, Luis Severino, Jose Iglesias, they were on the David Stearns special contracts. 1 year. Sean Manaea is Stearns special. So that payroll wasn't big when we were one opponent away from a World Series. So I don't think baseball needs a salary cap. You can spend as much as you want. Doesn't mean that the other team isn't going to come sneak you. Just ask the Diamondbacks how they got to the World Series in 2023 when everybody thought the Phillies were just going to have a cakewalk and walk their way into the World Series that year. All right, let's get to some more comments here. Copiz 9558. How you doing? Thank you for watching. Mets fans, this is a 1-year deal. Makes 0 sense unless they trade Beatty. I believe he's talking about Bichette. It is not a 1-year deal. Bichette's here for 3. Bobby Munoz earlier, when I was talking about Volpe, he won't sniff an all-star game until he hits for average. We've seen players get in for less. Mets spent bad. Dodgers don't. Who gives Scherzer and Verlander 38 to 40 years old, $80 million? Valid point. Dodgers are new level last 2 years. Deferrals, which we just hit on. Kevin Nasta says Bellinger is more valuable, plays all 3, outfielder, first base, elite level, rather have him. Sincere Brown says $2.11 billion for the Dodgers in deferrals, which is all true. Some more news recently. The Mets are bringing back 2 of their starting pitchers. They went ahead and avoided arbitration by agreeing to terms with David Peterson. David Peterson, last season, an all-star for the first time, had a really solid first half. I firmly believe arm fatigue was a reason why David Peterson just conked out toward the end. Peterson, 30 games last season, 9-6 record, 4.22 ERA, career high 168 and 2/3 innings, a $150 with the strikeouts. But Peterson avoids arbitration, got himself a new bag. Again, it was rumored that David Peterson was going to be moved, and again, avoided arbitration. The Mets came to terms bringing him back on a small deal. That was part of an arbitration process where they agreed to terms on 6 players, Peterson being the most notable. He moves to a 1-year, $8 million salary. Last season, he made 4.6 mil. So Peterson is at least going to be in Queens for one more season, barring a trade deadline trade. The Mets, surprisingly, um, wrapped up Tyler McGill in arbitration. McGill, who will miss the 2026 season recovering from Tommy John, they signed him to a 2-year deal, $2.5 million per year. He's not going to be ready until 2027. Francisco Alvarez and Luis Torrens both will be back in Queens. They're going to go ahead and they avoided arbitration with them. Alvarez gets a raise of $2.4 million. That was his first time being arbitration eligible. And Luis Torrens will now make $1.5 million. He avoids arbitration. Reed Garrett also got a new deal, as did Huascar Brazaban. I'm not very happy about that. Reed Garrett was a major part of that collapse, had a great April, great May, and then when June came around, it's like he forgot how to pitch. Huascar Brazaban, his salary is going to jump to $778K, from $778K to 1.05 million, and Reed Garrett is going to get 1.3. So Mets giving out the bags, keeping some guys. You didn't want to keep Alonso and Diaz, but you'll go keep the guys in the bullpen who helped you collapse. But that's the contract news. More comments here. Stanley says Mets need to trade for Peralta or Skubal. In my opinion, I think the Mets are more likely to go get Freddie Peralta than they are Tarek Skubal, only because Freddie Peralta came about in the Milwaukee Brewers system at the time that David Stearns was running things. So David Stearns goes after his guys. He's brought Tyrone Taylor here. He went and got Devin Williams. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Mets give up a couple of young players like a Ronnie Mauricio or a Brandon Sproat to try to get Peralta. If they're going to go get Tarek Skubal, they have to throw the farm at the Tigers, and I do believe that the Mets have enough capital in the farm system to go and get Tarek Skubal. It might cost them a Jet Williams. It might cost them a Kevin Parada. Maybe even Jonah Tong, who I'm not really sold on at a major league level, but they would have to throw the entire farm over to Detroit to go pick up Skubal. But again, like I said, I'm not gonna give him a full apology yet, but David Stearns still more work to do. Oh yes, Cal reminds me. Don't forget Stearns brought Adrian Hauser here. Yeah, we saw that worked out. Adrian Hauser. Funny story. I'll give you guys a little peek into my Mets fandom. I was at Citi Field last season, and I won a raffle for a game used jersey. They gave me Adrian Hauser, who wasn't even on the team anymore by that point. But I can say I have an authentic Mets jersey in my amongst my memorabilia. If I could ever meet Adrian Hauser, I'll definitely bring that jersey. But to get signed. But yeah, more work to be done. Again, I love the Bo Bichette signing. Very surprising signing, even though there's a log jam amongst the infield. Cal says, "Can I buy your Adrian Hauser jersey?" I mean, we could talk prices, brother, but it's an authentic game used piece of memorabilia. So I don't know exactly how much I'd be selling it for, but yeah, we could talk. But yeah, so the Bichette move I liked, came out of left field, no pun intended. Tucker is not here. He's in the Dodgers, but I like the Bichette move. One last thing that I want to touch on before we wrap it up on this edition of the Metropolitan Report Live. The Mets went in the media and they said that they were not going to do Amazing Day this year, the Fan Fest they did last January of 2025 last year. And David Stearns is yet to face the music. said he's not bringing back Amazing Day this year. Then they backtrack and say it wasn't meant to be an every year thing, when last year they said it was going to be an annual thing. The attendance and the turnout was great for Amazing Day last year. I wasn't there, but of course, I saw plenty of footage and plenty of pictures, got to meet the entire Mets roster, speak with Cohen and Stearns. And, Stearns, this guy, he goes on and says, I believe we're building a team that could compete for a World Series. I believe we're going to be competitive. And then you see comments like that in the press from Stearns, and you scratch your head and you say, do you really expect us to believe that? Now, he said these things prior to Bichette coming this way. But even one player doesn't fix all the problems, because Bo Bichette is not going to be on the mound throwing fastballs, sinkers, sliders, changeups. But, David Stearns says even his friends and family have ridiculed the way he's run this team and the moves that he made this past season. If you don't believe me, you can go on MLB.com. There's a nice article written up by Anthony DiComo about it. But I don't know. Then he talks about run prevention, and he lets Edwin Diaz, one of the best closers that this organization ever saw, go to the Dodgers because he didn't want to up the offer by $3 million more. He cites defense as a problem. That's why he got rid of Nimmo and put Simeon at second base. But you look at the other two teams that are a threat in the National League East. The Phillies, the Braves. And the Braves didn't just get better by getting Robert Suarez and by getting Mike Yastrzemski. They went ahead and took our pitching coach, Jeremy Hefner, and our first base coach, Antoine Richardson. So they improved not only on the field, but off of it as well. The Phillies are going to be who they are. The Phillies, they just signed JT Realmuto about an hour ago, so he stays in town. Re-signed Kyle Schwarber at the beginning of this offseason at the winter meetings. And Stearns, with these little cheapy deals, 2-year special, 3-year special. Like, who would want to come here? Cody Bellinger is still available, but I would love to have Belly here with Lindor and Soto and now Bo Bichette. But is that really going to happen? You let the greatest closer this franchise has seen walk, the most prolific first baseman, or the most prolific power hitting first baseman baseball has seen in the last couple of years walk. Is Citi Field even going to be packed opening day with Mets fans? Play the Pirates March 26th. So that's a Thursday, by the way. I'll be there covering the game. But are we expected to believe that this Mets team, as this roster is constructed right now, is going to compete with the Phillies or the Braves for the division, or even compete for a wild card spot? It remains to be seen. Granted, I love the Bo Bichette move, and I'll give David Stearns his due, but I'm not sold just yet. I think this team at most is maybe a 76 to 77, maybe even 78 if I'm being generous, a 78 win team. If you disagree with me, you let me know, but that's just my opinion. But folks, we're going to end it here. Oh, but before we end it, and then canceling Amazing Day. Yeah, you know why they're not bringing back Amazing Day? Because all these fans would love to talk to David Stearns and just tell him what they think of him, and it's not going to be positive. David Stearns let Alonso walk, let Diaz walk, trading him out, broken the hearts of so many Met fans. I personally feel Pete Alonso leaving was worse than Jacob deGrom leaving. Because at least the Mets tried to negotiate with deGrom. He told Pete Alonso good luck when he came back and said, this is what the Orioles offered me. So, yeah, you canceled Amazing Day because you didn't want to face the fire. I guarantee you, if David Stearns walked down the street in Flushing, walked down Roosevelt Avenue, he might get run over by a car. He might get a rock thrown at him. He'll definitely be verbally assaulted, cursed at. He doesn't want to face that fire. And for a guy to sit here and play cute in all these free agent signings, met with Robert Suarez, didn't make him an offer. Didn't make Pete an offer. Played cute with Edwin Diaz. All these other free agents going all over the place. Ranger Suarez going to the Red Sox, and all these other players that the Mets didn't even look their way or take a sniff at. And Stearns not making offers, watching guys go left and right to other teams. Yeah, David Stearns doesn't want to face the music from the Met fans. His own family has criticized him. Who's going to support you more than your family when you have a job? But a lot of people say, well, Cohen tried to do it his way early on. Let Stearns has the right to build the team how he sees fit. But like I said, we're not the. Oh, and by the way, you want to talk about small market teams that win? The Milwaukee Brewers, they're either winning the NL Central or in the playoffs every year the last few years. So small market teams can be successful. But David Stearns has got a lot more to show me before I can give him my stamp of approval. The Bichette signing is a positive sign, but I still need to see work on this rotation. But folks, this has been the Metropolitan Report. Again, I am Alfred Parsar Jr. Follow us. Socials are all here underneath. Instagram, Facebook. We're on X. Again, if you're watching this on YouTube, even if you're not watching this on YouTube, go to our YouTube page, the Metropolitan Report Podcast. Every time a new video drops, you'll be notified. We're going to be on every Friday going forward. New episode of the Metropolitan Report every Friday afternoon. That way you guys are not left puzzled as to when I'm going to air. I know I've been like random all over the off season, but every Friday afternoon, folks, I'll get you with another episode. We'll bring you short form content throughout the week. Definitely this weekend. So, yeah, we'll see you later.